Okay, so in this tutorial, I'm going to show you basically how to go from Maya to Mudbox. Kind of begin starting this little character model. I've had this guy for a little while now, and I've kind of tweaked him back and forth over the course of time. At one point, you just got to say he's done. But getting the initial body, it's really kind of up to you, really how you want to go on sculpting. If you want to continue everything in Mudbox, let me open up Mudbox. Because a lot of people just work strictly in Mudbox and basically will start their meshes in there. Me personally, I like to get as far as I can in Maya, keep it really low res, probably then shoot it over to Mudbox for any kind of like um, fine sculpting, I guess. So in other words, you could just open up Mudbox and start sculpting. Basically, use your sculpt tools down here and like say this grab button. Um, you can actually kind of like make it the whole distance in that way. Now you're basically moving the shape of the body around. Some people work like this. I'm not a very good clay sculptor. I don't really see things. I've not had a lot of training in that field, so to me it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But it can be done, you know. The more you have seen people just take, you, the more you raise the distance out on the actual brush itself, you can start to sculpt around. So if you have your body shape of a certain thing, you know, you can kind of start with the sphere and just start pulling it out, then start adding divisions in here to kind of get more of a contour, I guess. Me, what I would do is I would actually take my model, oops, my model from Maya at the base mesh like this and bring it in. Now, how did I start this? I did this like I said, a while back ago, and I started him basically just with not what many people will probably try to do. They'll just take a sphere and put in here and try to shape the sphere around it, which is really kind of a bad way to really model. Like a lot of people will take things and kind of like make the shape and everything, and you know, you go to your side view, back, and then just start pulling out arms and stuff. And you do have your body shape, but the only issue is a little tough for me is you've got all this resolution here with these triangles up here, and it just really poses a problem when it comes time to like trying to make the head right. And for me, it just was easier to see this thing in a box. Now you could actually go and probably lower the subdivisions here and then just delete some of these faces on the top up here and then start crossing over. Maybe that'll work. Maybe it will. You know, it's kind of up to you, depending on how your character is. I know with our project here, we have like animals and stuff like that, so all the time it may not work, but that is a way to kind of go about doing it. I mean, you could actually go in here and start deleting these faces here. Then just start bridging these pieces together. Bridge. And deal with, you know, your triangles and your settings. Maybe make a division across here, so you can kind of go ahead and have your linking to the one right there. Let me get out of here and like just connect these components on the edge. Shift, right click, connect components. Now you can press shift and it'll give you the middle spot of that division. Press enter. And you know, then start closing this out right here and maybe trying to bridge this, or you could probably actually split this right here try to make a square. It's just really kind of, it's hard to deal with, so it's just easier to create a box basically so you have your topology straight. So how I would start modeling my guy here is, oops, that's what I would look at him to begin with. I'm going to take a box and make everything. I'm going to extrude legs. I'm going to make the hands separately after I've extruded the arms and put on there. The hands are basically squares that I've extruded a box and then took faces and extruded 3 faces off and kind of made these big rounded fingers, because whenever you smooth this over, you know, you get these big bulgy fingers that you can kind of like cartoony hands, which is kind of the goal. And I'll do this hole separately, but it really begin with, I just get the boxy straight down for the actual body. Let me see. So let me drop a cube in here. See if I can kind of recreate this. It's been a while, like I said, since I did this, so going back and doing it will probably take me a while, but I'll show you initially how I get started. Make sure everything is on 0 space. Always keep everything, so that way when I'm creating, if I can kind of work symmetry, I have mirrored this guy down the middle and deleted half of him, and you can use your mirror tool up here to connect them, but it's only got to be like in 0 space, because whenever you mirror things around, you delete half of this mesh, it's going to mirror on the 0 space. So then I would add some divisions here, obviously, to go ahead and get the initial mesh. Right here. 2, 4, 4, 4. Probably too much. Now I can kind of go ahead and start going to my front view, get my vertexes, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go up to the shoulder, because I'm going to bring in the shoulders and everything later. Probably could use another division in there, which I can go about doing. Get this all straight like that. Then I can take my scale and start scaling out kind of the fatness of him, how he would be. I'll look at my side view. It's kind of looking right. Probably need to would start to add some more division. So now basically I have my molds here that I can kind of go ahead and start my body. Basically I can cut my arms in here, and I can cut my legs down here. And then I could just start extruding the head kind of at the top to kind of give it that part up here whenever I get ready. Like what I would do here now is I would start to push these in, kind of make the back even. I would worry about my mouth. Since my mouth was a little different, I had to cut in a mouth and kind of push in like a mouth hole basically. I cut it in, and then I kind of extracted the vertexes out of there to do that with this. Like I said, this guy, I've had him for a while now, and I've kind of been back tweaking him, so it's kind of been a work in progress. Not saying I'm too happy with it, but you know, eventually got to the point where he was good for demos and painting and texturing and stuff like that. And I would probably take these up here and go ahead and extrude in like the face up here, basically. I could take these faces up here and start extruding stuff for the top up here. Now I have something I can kind of start shaping the shoulders around, shaping the head. Get off that. But all being said, you can kind of start taking that initial shape basically if you want to, and then bring that into Mudbox once you get your initial shape down, and then start defining any kind of like sculpting and stuff like that. Beginning, sometimes it's better to stay in Maya, I would say, if you don't really need to go that far, but the fact that the sculpting tools are there to help is really great. In Mudbox, I would say you can take it into Maya and do sculpting in Maya like we explained in the earlier videos, but it's just as easy, just really take it in Mudbox and you got more of an advantage with the textures and stuff like that. So, having said all this, I have this base mesh here, and it kind of worked out, like I said, your different reference images, what I brought in, just to show you how I modeled them on the reference images. I have these separate teeth of, separate all this stuff. These are separate from the actual image itself, like they're just separate objects. Whenever I took it into Mudbox, first I took it in and I was able to sculpt the side right here, but then I was able to kind of like combine it all together and bring it in. So I'll just leave it all together. Biggest thing you got to do though before you taking it all into Mudbox is make sure you set the UVs, which is kind of my point of the whole tutorial right here. Let me combine this all again, and I'm going to delete the history on it. I'm going to get rid of any of this stuff right here. This frog mesh, I don't need it. Well, maybe I do. There we go. So now I have him back at 0, right there in the middle. You can actually go over and type in 0 value to give him where it was. I want to change the 0 value because I want it right in Mudbox. It will transfer over the same exact way. I'll put this on 0, which is the line right here, and if I want to change this value to 0, you can always go to freeze transformation. So the most important thing to think of whenever you're taking it into Mudbox is you need to have your UVs set. And what that is this craziness here of this UV editor. So in other words, if I brought a square in here and I wanted to check the UVs or the textures of this, I wanted to texture some, I would need to understand the whole UV editor, the way like whenever you unwrapped the box, this is how the UVs are set. Because whenever you go to painting and stuff like that in Mudbox, these things need to be set right to where it can receive the paint pretty good, like all the topology needs to be laid out clearly, and obviously this is not clearly laid out because Mudbox would see that as an error. It's going to probably give me an error anyway bringing it in there, but it's not going to be anything to where like I couldn't paint on it. In other words, just the simple fact that I know that like this topology right here is just some spheres I laid in there, so it's going to give me like an error of like too many vertexes are touching, which is not a problem when it comes to painting, but this would be an issue because I would be painting on this image itself and trying to paint on this UV template right here, which would be no good. So you basically want to kind of map it out, give it a projection, in other words, and honestly, I've did this a few times now. The best one I was finding was the automatic. He actually is kind of a cylinder looking thing, but automatic basically lays them out to where all the objects are cuts all the topology up and lays it out in a nice form fashion. So if you just select the object and press automatic, now if you look at your UV editor over here, you've got a pretty nice, everything's laid out. You could actually move this kind of stuff if you wanted to around, but you know, it's not really no need to. As long as you can get to everything, everything's not like layered on top of each other. It's kind of the best thing. So now that I have a UV template set for my object, you can go to File, and if you have the same Mudbox version of your Maya version on your computer, like 2020 to 2020, you will come up with this like selection up here. And if you don't, then you can just go load it in the plugin. But if not, you can always export this thing as an FBX and then import it into Mudbox as a FBX. But it's just as easy right here just to send it to Mudbox. Send as new scene. And Mudbox, you see down here the green, it's connecting to Mudbox. Update. Coming up, it's coming up. Alright, so now I'm getting a Mudbox screen on my other thing, but I'm getting also this error, which is no big deal because it's just telling me the high valence vertex. Like I said, if I was really worried about certain things, I would probably go try to remesh this thing, but you can actually retopology in Mudbox if you wanted to. So I'm just going to kind of bring this in as this mesh right here. Now my Mudbox is opening. It's connected to Maya, because that way you can kind of go back and forth from Maya to Mudbox. And now my guy's in here. Notice he's a low res poly, which is fine. In the other videos we talked about layers and stuff like that. So you have your surface. I don't want to start sculpting on my surface here. I want to create a layer and sculpt on that, and I want to like give it some more divisions so the sculpting tools can be more defined. So I'm going to create a sculpt layer, and I'm going to bring some divisions in here. Let's go to 3. 2's fine right now. And so now it's just basically you sculpting and having fun with your object. You know, this is, I don't really need much sculpting with my guy right here anyway, but say I wanted to give him like some little bumps on his back or kind of raise it up, kind of make it look kind of froggy, I guess. What I'm using here is I'm using this stamp image as my brush, because if I didn't, then I didn't have the stamp image. It would just be this larger bubbles like right here, which I'd have to turn my strength down and possibly my brush down a little bit too. Radius. I'm going to do that, but I kind of like that little stamp image there. It looks kind of cool. Some around the back, probably his shoulders would have like some little bumps. Yeah, and it's sculpt away time, I guess. I think probably right here underneath his lip, he would have like some little indentions kind of coming up. And what this is doing, this is kind of using the stamp image as kind of a brush. You can go these stencils right here, and basically what the stencils do is they'll stencil in this shape or whatever. So like the scratches here, it's basically the brush is going to take the attributes of this stencil here. So you can kind of like go in, you can the feet would probably have some like funny bumps. That's probably a little too much on the feet. I'll press Q to get rid of that stencil, take it off there. I'm still using it, but I kind of like that stamp though. Go smooth some of this back over. I think it. locked it down. Unlock it. And if you don't like the material that you're painting on, like if you want to be able to see it more, you can go to these material presets right here. Change it, you know, some other little highlights things you can do in Maya. To me, I don't really get into all this down here, or the lighting actually, for that matter. I usually stick to just the sculpting and the painting. And we'll talk about painting probably in the next little tutorial. So yeah, this is the way you can kind of like bring them in here. Now, you have this mesh. I'm going to create another sculpting layer. We'll go up a division. I'm going to create like some bits in him. I'm going to use my sculpt tool, but I'm going to use it invert function. Maybe he would have something like kind of right there underneath his eye. Probably going down his back. His teeth or his feet down here. Kind of give him some toes. Kind of. I never really liked this right here on my guy, so kind of like maybe hide it with some he was bending. This is probably a little too much, but it's fun to just kind of shape them and stuff. Then what you can do is adjust the opacity of the layers. I like it like that. That's cool. So if I wanted to send this back now to Maya, it's connected to Maya, so I want to probably need to save this scene. Save scene as Frogman, Mudbox, wherever. I usually probably save this within the whatever project file I'm working in with Maya. Now you can just go back and you could send to Maya. You could update the current scene, or you could send selected as a new scene. Oh, you probably need to select it. Right click on the object, select model. Send to Maya. Let's go update current scene. Send base meshes instead. No, I want to send meshes at the current level, what this is. Did it not send to them? Let me try it again. It may need to. I may have more success sending it as a update current scene. So it's really weird. All right, we'll send as a new scene then. And it's going to close this scene right out here, so I'm just going to save it and I'm going to continue. It's going to open up my new one. And voila, now I've got my sculpted guy back into Maya that you can kind of go in here and do some more work to if you want to, or if you feel like you like texturing in Maya more than you do so there, you now have these updated sculptures. This is high-res model. So yeah, that's kind of back and forth with Maya to Mudbox. The next little blurb or blog of them, I'll go over like painting and stuff like that. Oh, maybe this was the warning I was getting. Selecting mesh not updated. I don't know. Figure that out when the time comes. And you can do some more work, send it back to Mudbox. But this is a kind of an overview brief of how to like transfer the files back and forth. Like I said, I like to work in as much as I can in Maya. But if you think that you just can do all the work in Mudbox, you know, feel free to go ahead and drop a sphere in there and start sculpting it around. Start with maybe a small cube in here and kind of extract some ears out or something like that, then bring it into Maya or bring it into Mudbox and just take it from there, then bring it back. So, but yeah, in the next video I'll go over like painting and stuff in Mudbox if you want to like give it some textures. But the biggest thing is to still have that UV wrap on it, because now it's going to give me, there it is. Still got my UV maps that you can use. You can always screenshot this, let's take a snapshot of this stuff here, and it gives you a screen. Bring that into Photoshop and texture it that way if you'd like to. And I have a video of that in one of my channels, taking a UV snapshot into Photoshop, bring it back in and reapply it to the model. So if you're better at creating Photoshop textures, that's fine too. I like to paint. I think it's fun. So, okay, well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.